And, Joe, we're going to bring on a very special guest, and this is a foundation that we helped support over the last, 4 or 5 years, a great foundation, the Marty Lyons Foundation. You can find them at martylyonsfoundation.org, on Twitter, at Marty Lyons FDN. They do a phenomenal job, man. What they do is they fulfill special wishes of children chronologically aged from 3 to 17 years old if they are diagnosed having a terminal or life-threatening illness. So this is really great to bring on a former New York Jets running back as well, and it's John Nitti. So, John, this is Joe and Tyson. How you doing, man?
Glad to be part of the show.
Well, first of all, thank you for your time, man. I know it's the summertime. You probably have a million things going on, so we definitely appreciate it.
Yeah, well, we just had the golf outing for the foundation last night, so it is a busy time. But you guys do some great things for the foundation, and as you were just saying, for Big Brothers Big Sisters and everything else. So, anytime that we can give back to you, we certainly want to do that.
Oh, absolutely, and we appreciate that. Can you just give us some additional background on the Marty Lyons Foundation?
Sure. This is something that, and Marty was a teammate of mine. Back in '82 was when he started the foundation, but it was really something that he was doing on his own. And there were a few people that were trying to convince him to formalize it as a foundation. And he really was not interested in all of the publicity and the hype. And that just tells you the type of person that Marty is that he just wanted to go out and help kids. And in 1 week, one particular week, his father died. His oldest son was born, and a kid that he was a big brother to also passed away. And those 3 events in 1 week convinced Marty that he could help a lot more kids by formalizing the foundation and what we do, which is basically grant wishes to kids that are chronically or terminally ill, as you had said at the start. And so 7,500 kids later, some of them, unfortunately, are no longer with us, but a lot of the times doing something for those kids has been the difference and made them feel special and helped them turn the corner. And I don't know if you've heard this before, but it's definitely true that when you have cancer, a lot of it is, and not all of them have cancer, but a vast majority, of course, would, and given the nature of the illness. And it just helps sometimes psychologically to have that positive energy and to help them, get out there and fight the disease. And that's what Marty's done along with his staff. But it's mainly Marty. I mean, that guy puts in more hours on this than you could ever imagine. And I've always known that, but recently in the past year, I started working with him over at the Lantec Group. We build athletic fields and stadiums, and so I hear him on the phone in his office talking to these parents of children that may have just passed and crying with them and holding their hand via the phone, but he does it in person too, and he just devotes so many hours to these kids. It's incredible.
John, my name is Joe, and I want to welcome to the show. I also want to thank you for everything that you're doing with the Marty Lyons Foundation as well. What is your favorite memory of something that you've been involved with the foundation?
Yeah, that's a question, and we help kids from one end of the spectrum to the other. One end of the spectrum may be we had a situation where parents actually had 2 kids that were on life support, but they only had enough of a power generator to support one. So if they lost power, they'd basically have to make Sophie's choice and decide which kid they were going to keep going. And, without life support, they would only last so long. And so that was an instance where we went out there and got them a big enough generator to support both systems, and they wouldn't be put in that kind of a situation. But I think my favorite story was a young a young boy that was in the neighborhood. He was disabled, and sometimes kids, are just like kids, and so they weren't exactly. He wasn't maybe the favorite kid in the neighborhood. So we built a playground, especially for him. That was a really cool playground, though, and his backyard became the center of the neighborhood and became the most popular kid in the neighborhood. And once all those kids got to really know him, they realized what a great kid he was, and he ended up with lifetime friendships out of that. So I think that has to be one of my favorite Marty Lyons stories.
Once again, we're speaking with John Nitti, former running back of the New York Jets, also member of the Marty Lyons Foundation. John, what are some of the biggest challenges that the foundation faces?
Well, a lot of times it's raising money, and we do something that a lot of foundations, for instance, the Make-A-Wish Foundation does not do, and that's we grant second wishes. But when we're in financial trouble, so when 2008 hit and the financial services crisis, you get a lot less donations. And there have been a couple of times, in the 36-year history of the Marty Lyons Foundation, where we had to put a moratorium on second wishes and even cut down, not significantly, but cut to a degree the first-time wishes. And that's a tough thing because we bring in as much money as we can, and 92% of it all goes to the kids. We have some overhead, but not a whole lot. Most of the people that work on the foundation are volunteers. And so we're trying to get that up to 93% to match Marty's number. If we can do that, I think that's a pretty successful number, that 93%, 92% now goes straight to the kids. So, but when you don't have enough funds, and we do a lot of different things to raise money for these kids, and there's a lot of generous people out there that donate their time and money to the foundation. So, but I would say that's the biggest challenge is when right now economic times are good and people are donating, but that's not always the case.
How can our listeners get involved with the foundation as far as donating or even donating their time? Is there anywhere that you could tell them to go?
Yes, that's a great question. Really appreciate that very much. So they can go to the MartyLyonsFoundation.org, and everything is right there, including the phone number. And while we're talking, I'll also look up the phone number so I can give it on the air right now. Of course, this is not to Marty himself, but it's to the foundation. So there's 631-543-9474. So they can either call that number or go on the MartyLyonsFoundation.org website, and everything's right there as far as how to apply for a wish, how to contribute your time, just every bit of information that you would need about the foundation.
Awesome. And as John, as we mentioned, you're a running back, play with the Jets, but you also came out of Yale. What was your road to the NFL like, coming as a running back coming out of Yale?
Well, what's funny is in that time, we were playing a lot of big-time schools, what would be considered, now the Ivy League is in the FCS, but in those days it was probably closer to the BCS, in that we played Boston College and Air Force and Navy and schools like that, Miami of Ohio and UConn. So the level of competition is still great. In fact, Yale just won their first Ivy championship outright in 37 years, and our team was actually the last one to do that. So that was pretty fun. But there were a number of us that went on and played. So Kenny Hill played for the Raiders and the Giants, won a Super Bowl with the Giants. Rich Diana played for the Dolphins. Jeff Rohrer was with played for the Cowboys. Joe Dufek with the Buffalo Bills. And then we had a bunch of guys that were either drafted or tried out. And then right before us, there were some legendary players like Calvin Hill, who played for the Cowboys, and Gary Fensick, who played for the Bears, and Dick Duran, who played for the Detroit Lions. So it wasn't that unique. So, but I had a great time with the Jets. Unfortunately, I had a few injuries. I think I would have preferred staying at my natural position of strong safety, but they had me as a running back and on special teams, and had quite a few injuries. So, but it was a great time. And when you play with people like Marty Lyons, and there were others there like Wesley Walker and Greg Buttle and Kenny Schroy. Kenny was one of the co-founders of the foundation, and the list goes on and on, with Bruce Harper, who I just heard you're going to be with over the weekend. Just incredible guys, and in those days, guys didn't jump around as much, so you really established lifetime friendships.
John, you spoke about your time with the New York Jets. What was that like, and also what kind of went into you moving from strong safety to that running back? How did that happen exactly?
Well, it actually happened in college. So I came in as a strong safety and had a good freshman year, but then they needed I was kind of big for that, in that era. It was a 215-pound strong safety, and so they needed some guys that could run a little bit at running back and fullback, so they moved me, and then you become an unknown at strong safety. So when the Cowboys were actually looking at me as a strong safety, but the Jets were looking at me as a running back, so you kind of get into that mode. It's funny. My son right now was a quarterback for Bucknell, and he's like 6'6", 240, and can run a 4.59 40. And a couple people were saying, "Hey, if it doesn't work out at quarterback, you should look at tight end." But there's no way. All your film is quarterback. It's very rare. You do see it. You do see guys that switch, but it doesn't happen that often. And as far as what it was like. It was just, an incredible experience. I mean, the intensity, just the work ethic of a lot of the guys was incredible. And, and at that point in your life, there is nothing else. Like, I can remember practicing on Thanksgiving Day, and you didn't even think twice about it. You weren't like, oh, I need to get home to my family. And then you all went and had dinner together. And at that time we were in Shea, so there was this thing called the Diamond Club, and we would have turkey dinner with the whole team, and that was our life. When we made the playoffs, because we made it two years in a row in the 81-82 season and the 82-83 season, and so we just would New Year's Day we were practicing. We didn't go out New Year's Eve because we were getting ready for practice. Maybe some of the guys did, but I certainly couldn't afford to. I was always one of those guys that had to do everything I could to contribute and to stay there. So, but again, holidays didn't mean anything. Family functions, you were that was your number one priority in life for that period of time. So it was a great experience.
And you mentioned playing with Marty Lyons, and we had him on last year, and he talked to us about his career and some of his memories. And as a teammate, what was it like playing with him? Like, you had guys like him and Klecko and Gastineau and all those guys. Like, what was it like being around there or playing with them?
Yeah, the sack exchange was something else, and I'll add Abdul Salam to that list that you just mentioned, which was the four of them. But it was. Again, incredible. Marty Lyons was a very aggressive, hard-nosed, intense football player. And, what I love about the guy is that just as ferocious as he was out on a football field, and he would do anything to play in a game. I saw him play with more injuries than you can imagine. And all he wanted to do was get out on that field and do his job. And as intense as he was, and as a true warrior out there on the field, he's just as caring and supportive and sensitive to all of these families and these kids. And, to me, being able to have that combination is a very, very unique and impressive individual. And I got to tell you that, I admire Marty Lyons tremendously.
Yeah, no, we're big fans of his, just from his career, what he does on the radio, what he does with his foundation. And, he came on our show. We expected, 10 minutes. We talked for, 40 minutes. We probably could have went on for, 3 hours. He was super generous with us. And the other player that, for Jet fans, it's like a hot topic for us, is Joe Klecko and the Hall of Fame. And to us, it's a complete crime that he's not in there. We don't understand it at all. What are your thoughts on Joe Klecko as a player?
Joe Klecko was another guy, I'm going to tell you, one of the strongest people I've ever seen in my life. And as I'm sure you guys know, I think he was all pro in 3 positions. Hardly anyone's done that, or if anyone. And how that guy is not in the Hall of Fame, I don't know. But, Joe Klecko was one of these guys that was just incredibly, incredibly strong. And you did not want to mess with Joe Klecko. I walked into the gym my first day as a rookie, and you see guys with 3 plates on the bar, which is 315 pounds, and they are standing doing military over the shoulder presses with that 315. I was used to seeing linemen bench that. And he's out there doing shoulder presses with it. And right then and there I knew. And then, I look over and Wesley Walker, who's, a thin, wide receiver, and he's benching 315. And, for a while there, I thought, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. this is something else. But Joe is another great teammate. You just looked around the room and you knew it was something special. And as you know, we came 1 game away from the Super Bowl when I was there and lost in that mud bowl to the Dolphins when they left the tarp off the field to try and slow Freeman down and Wesley down. But that was a special team that was probably one of the better or one of the best NFL teams to ever play, and we just missed it.
John, you talked a little bit about playing special teams, which we all know can definitely be a very vicious part of the game. It's very fast-paced out there as well when that ball's up in the air. What was that like, and what was your most memorable moment on a playing special teams?
That's a great question. So, I was coming down against the Steelers and got hit by this guy, Gabriel Rivera. His nickname in college was Senor Sack, and I believe he was the first-round pick for the Steelers. About 275, ran like a 4.65 or 4.7 40, and he came across the field. And, they tell you to keep your head on a swivel when you're going down on a punt, but, I guess I didn't do that. And he hit me so hard that I went flying off the frame of the film like a torpedo. They showed it 27 times, when they run it in reverse and then back forward and then reverse and back forward 27 times. And the laughter in the room got louder and louder every single time. And I got lower in my chair every single time. But I was knocked out on the turf there. And what happened was I thought I was in a pileup because there was an arm over my face mask when I woke up, and it was actually my arm that I was trying to push away. It was so dead I didn't even know it was mine. But in those days, there wasn't the concussion protocol or anything that they have now. And so, they asked me a couple questions like, who are we playing? And, I looked over and saw the black and gold and knew it was the Steelers, and then what's today, and it's Sunday, and what's today's date, and I didn't know, but I said, if you can tell me what exact date it is, you're a better man than I am. And they said, get back in the game, wise guy, and that was it. And I played the rest of the game, found out 18 years later that I had a small fracture in my C2 vertebrae, so I was pretty lucky that I was able to play and not have any lifelong ramifications from that. But that would definitely be my most memorable play.
Yeah, that's pretty wild, man. We love talking to former players, and they always had that same kind of story where it's like they either lit somebody up or they got lit up, and they had the same kind of thing where it's like, listen, it was a physical game, but that's how we played it. And now it's like when you look at today's NFL, what are your thoughts on all these rule changes in terms of like trying to promote player safety?
I think they're great, and I'm actually on the Head Injury Association here on Long Island. So, there's a lot to the fact that most of the damage comes if you don't have enough rest from a concussion, and a lot of these rules are to protect the players. You look back in the day when Jack Tatum was hitting guys, and receivers were out there. They were all fair game, whether they caught the ball or not, whether even they touched the ball. And now, so many of the rules about head-to-head and defenseless receivers and everything. And I don't really think that it does any real change to the game itself. I mean, you look at these guys now, and as much as we had the Joe Kleckos and Marty Lyons of the world, I mean, these guys train even better, even harder, and they're out there, really hitting. So, I don't think that the game is any less intense. I think the rule changes are out there to really benefit the game and benefit the players and for the rest of their lives. So, sometimes you look at it and you question it a little bit. Like I do wonder sometimes about some of the calls made, not the rules themselves, but some of the interpretations of the rules. But in general, I think it's all for the best, and I do believe that Roger Goodell is doing a good job of keeping the game whole, but transitioning it into a better environment long term for the players. And you look at the concussion protocol now compared to what I went through, and they go back into the locker room. They do the pre-neurological testing, then they have the post-neurological testing after the injury right there in the locker room, and they can tell right away whether this was a concussion or not and whether they can get back out and play or not. And then they go through that protocol numerous times until they're ready to get back, and usually it's about 7 to 10 days. So that certainly is a big difference from going back into the game that day. And one of the biggest risks in a concussion is what's called second impact syndrome, and that's when you've had a hit to the head and then you get another severe one right away, and that's when you get the real complications. So, a lot of the talk about CTE and everything right now, I think that a lot of that will be taken care of with all these rule changes. And in the end, it's still a great game, and yet you're protecting these guys from some of the things that you're seeing, some of the older players going through.
And John, one last question for you: Do you still do you follow the New York Jets right now, like as a former player?
I do. In fact, we still have season tickets. We split it with a friend, but we'll go to about 4 games. And the Jets are incredible the way they invite us back, for the Ring of Honor, which of course Marty Lyons is in that, and Kevin Mawai was just inducted last year. So we go back for that induction, and if there's not a Ring of Honor induction, then they bring us back for an alumni reunion. We have one in the summer and one during the game and during the season, and the whole Jet organization, from Neil Glatt to Ashley Kirby, who works with us, and Chris Pierce and Tracy Truitt and Jeff Hernandez. They're just all incredible people that do so much for us. So I follow the Jets still. My whole family's a Jet fan. My kids are Jet fans, and we get to the games, and I'm actually excited right now. I think it's definitely a rebuilding time, but I'd say give it a couple years, and with some of the Patriots getting a little older, and the Jets a young, growing team, developing team, and I think Sam Darnold is a good pick. I think that the Jets would have would have been thrilled to have him as the first pick, let alone the third. So the fact that they had to wait 2 players and still get him, I think is a real good thing. And had a good experience. I think he had about 27 games in college and threw for over 7,000 yards. So he's experienced and got a good head on his shoulders. I understand he reads defenses real well, pre and post snap, and I'm excited. I'm really looking forward to the Jets developing into one of the best teams in the AFC over the next 2-3 years.
Yeah, we're excited too. To be honest with you, it's like they had to do it. It was a tough rebuild, but they're doing it the right way. And like bringing in a 21-year-old quarterback with that kind of work ethic, the mindset, the talent, it's impossible to not be excited. I mean, we take calls every week, and fans are just like, we want training camp. Like it's nice to be on the upswing for a change instead of kind of like being stuck in like neutral or going backwards. So we're definitely very excited. John, first of all, thank you for your time, man. We could ask you questions for hours, man. You got great insight on the team and also great insight on the Marty Lyons Foundation. So can you one more time give out the best way for our listeners to get involved with the foundation?
Yeah, I think the best way is to go on martylyonsfoundation.org, and all the information is there. That's really and we would love more volunteers. And it doesn't have to be money. It's time and money. So either one you can give. Or, the other good thing is when people come forward with some children that we can help. And so if you know anyone out there that's in one of the states that the Lyons Foundation supports, so you have to be, there's 12 states, Alabama, Connecticut, Florida, Georgia, Maryland, Massachusetts, New Jersey, New York, North Carolina, South Carolina, Texas, and Virginia. So if you're in one of those states and you know of a child that needs some help, we would love to hear from you.
Awesome. Well, John, once again, thank you for your time. You got to come back on again, man. We can ask you for football questions, but thank you for your time, and we will do our best to promote everything we can for the Marty Lyons Foundation.
I really appreciate that, and I just want to say one more thing. Todd Bowles, the players love playing for that guy, and they'll go to battle for him. So that's another thing that's, I think, exciting about the next few years, because I'm sure he's around for the duration, and that guy motivates his players, and they want to play for him. So that's another good factor that we all have to look forward to.
Yeah, we're no doubt excited, man. We're definitely excited about this season. John, thank you very much, man. Have a great night.
Hey, thanks for your time. It was nice talking with both of you. Thank you.